It's a story unlike any I've ever covered. We've never covered what happened in this case and tracing and trying to figure it out, peel back the layers and get to the bottom of it. But when you peel through everything, it's the murder of 2 children and the murder of a mother who was married to a man for 28 years, raised his children. Those are the allegations against Chad Daybell, that he took the life of his own wife, 28 years together. All those kids. And then taking the lives of his girlfriend / new wife's children and burying them in his own backyard. This is sick. I mean, that's the bottom line to all this, but how you got there, you know, it took forever to figure it out and what was going on here. But the allegations are he and his new wife, Lori, the Daybells, the Doomsday Bells, were running this doomsday cult, prepping for the final days, getting ready to lead the 144,000, but fleeing Idaho when the heat turned up, and then hanging out down in Hawaii by the pool with a bag of money. Let me bring in, at the courthouse in Boise, Idaho, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who is back at the courthouse today. Another big day. Let's start with Tammy Daybell, and more testimony today about her death and the autopsy results.
Well, good evening to you, Vinny. Yes, Dr. Marsden, she was on the stand. She is the chief deputy medical examiner. And remember, way back to May 1st, Dr. Christensen, he was on the stand. So he is the lead, and then she is kind of his assistant, so the deputy. And so she talked about the cause of death, which they found was asphyxia, and they also talked about the manner of death. Homicide. Now, John Pryor on cross-examination really did try to attack her credibility on the stand, saying to her that she was just a fellow when she performed this autopsy. Now, Tammy Daybell's body had been exhumed. At first, a coroner ruled that Tammy Daybell died of natural causes. So John Pryor tried to say to her, so how many autopsies had you performed? You were only a fellow. She said, well, I've performed 500 by the time that she worked on Tammy Daybell. Now, you compare that to Dr. Christensen, who was the lead. He's performed about 7,200 autopsies, but still 500, quite a bit. But still, John Pryor kept trying on his cross-examination, saying, really, your finding of asphyxia and homicide is just subjective. You ruled a bunch of things out and came up with asphyxia. He asked her about DNA under Tammy Daybell's fingernails. Let's listen to some of that cross-examination.
And the type of asphyxia you're talking about is the stoppage of the breathing. Tammy Daybell, someone was trying to stop. That's what you're suggesting, is someone was trying to stop Tammy Daybell from breathing, physically covering up her airway. Is that correct?
Correct.
So explain to me, with the bruises on the arms, did you see any scratches on the fingers or any sign of any DNA under the fingers?
So in this case, she had been prepared for burial. She had been washed, cleaned, and there was also mold on her fingers from the internment. So at this point, there would be no trace evidence.
And there were no scratches of any kind that would indicate any kind of a struggle. Is that correct?
Correct.
Nothing, in fact, to indicate any kind of a struggle, correct?
The bruises could indicate a struggle, but it's, again, nonspecific.
And when you say nonspecific, we don't know how those bruises got there, correct?
Correct.
So, Vinny, yes, John Pryor just keeps trying to poke holes in the testimony and the theory, the state's theory here. Not certain how well it's working, but he keeps trying.
So let's talk about, you know, what the state does now, right? So John Pryor doing what he does. He's a great lawyer, attacking on cross-examination. What did the state do on redirect?
And I've watched the state do this several times throughout this trial. John Pryor he is able to make some points when he's up there on cross-examination, but then immediately on redirect, the state gets up there and really kind of leaves the jury with the feeling of, no, that really could not have happened the way John Pryor wants to say. So let's listen to the redirect.
And counsel went over with you again, death by essentially asphyxiation by exclusion of oxygen. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Are there ways that someone can cause someone else's death in that manner without leaving any signs or external injuries?
Absolutely.
Are you aware of some of the mechanisms or way a person could asphyxiate someone else without leaving those signs when we're talking about the exclusion of oxygen category?
Yes.
What are those?
This would include things like smothering with a pillow, putting a bag over the head, putting a weight on the chest so that the chest can't rise. These are all potential things that would not necessarily leave any sign.
And also some of the things discussed, possibly two people. So John Pryor got that out there, as well as the state talking about maybe possibly two people could have done this. So interesting stuff, Vinny.
Well, you mentioned two people. Let's talk about Alex Cox, Lori's brother. We know that he took out Charles Vallow. That is undeniable. It is believed that he is the hitman. He's the one who is sent out by the Doomsday Couple to commit these killings. An FBI investigator was able to place him at the burial sites behind Chad's house.
Vinny, so this is a device belonging to Alex Cox under that name, Homer J. Maximus. And it was really fascinating how the FBI agent really was able to pinpoint these data clusters on Chad Daybell's property. One starts by Alex Cox's residence, and then the next 2.5 hours, there are pings or these data clusters on Chad Daybell's property. So he testified about this today. Why don't we take a listen to that?
Between about approximately a 2.5 hour period, there were numerous data points generally around the Daybell residence. The first data point that we got at 9:21 is actually behind the main residence. And then at 9:22, we get another one that's actually on the northwest corner of the Daybell residence, near a gate there. And then we have a gap in time where we don't have any precise information, but until 10:39, when there's another data point, also a GPS data point that's behind the residence. And then at 10:57, there's another also behind the residence with a 5-meter radius, also GPS. As best I could determine, it seems like the device is leaving that area of the residence at approximately 11:45.
So all of those data points from a device registered to Alex Cox. And in the courtroom, you can see some jurors. They have the monitors in front of them. And some of them are really leaning in to those monitors because then the FBI agent, the investigator on the stand, is using a red marker, and John Pryor is as well when he's doing his cross-examination to pinpoint some certain areas. And the jurors are really taking a look to see, okay, at this time, the device was here. At this time, the device was here. So that's been interesting to watch.
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment to think about those jurors, right? I mean, it took us covering this story months to understand it. And now this jury is just handed all this information, hours at a time, day after day. I don't envy their position, but it'll be up to the prosecutors, like they did in Lori Daybell's trial, to make it make sense for them. Okay, we just talked about Alex Cox now in the backyard at the burial site. That same day, Chad is texting Tammy, because Tammy's still alive at this point. He's texting her that day.
And that day, and within minutes of a device belonging to Alex Cox leaving his property. So it shows a ping, Alex Cox going to a Del Taco. And just, I think it was a minute before, Chad Daybell is texting Tammy Daybell, his first wife, talking about how he killed and buried a raccoon. Let's listen to that testimony from the investigator.
This message appeared on the device on September 9th at 11:53 a.m. And it was a text message from a device attributed to Chad Daybell, and it came into that device for Tammy Daybell. And the text message read, "Well, I've had an interesting morning. I felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While I did so, I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times."
Yeah, and Vinny, that text was sent at 11:53 a.m. And then when you compare that to the data clusters of Alex Cox's device, 11:45 a.m. Alex Cox's device left the Chad Daybell property. At 11:52 a.m., that's when he's at that Del Taco in Rexburg, Idaho. So 11:53, Chad is sending this text to Tammy saying, "I buried a raccoon in the backyard."
So now he's putting himself in the backyard where Alex Cox is placed as well. Not a good look. Not a good look. Crucial, critical evidence there. I just couldn't help notice, though, anytime Chad Daybell talks about storms, I get this really bad image in my mind, so I'm trying to erase it. So I will. Anyone who watched the show last night knows what we're talking about here. Okay, so where are we in this case? How close do you think we are to the end of the state's case, at least?
Vinny, I think we're getting close. The state has gone through so many witnesses and put forth so much evidence. So we'll have to see. They don't give us a heads up like we usually get in some other trials as to what they're thinking. But it could be by the end of this week, in a few days, that the state ends up resting its case. And then we know defense counsel John Pryor has said that he is going to call several witnesses, including 4 expert witnesses, to refute a lot of the state's theory.
All right, Kelly Craft in Boise, Idaho, where all of this is happening. Thank you so much. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the death of Tammy and Chad's reaction with our experts who are standing by, Dr. Priya Banerjee, forensic pathologist, and Susan Constantine, human behavior expert.
We are underway in the trial of doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Logan. I could never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
Chad and Tammy Daybell at their wedding. And think about this was the beginning of really the next 28 years where they build a family. You look at it, young, happy, wholesome, right? That's the life you plan. You're surrounded by your loved ones, and they send you off on this amazing journey called life, called marriage. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But things changed a little bit for Chad Daybell. You know, you think about what their life was like in Idaho. He's a grave digger, you know. She's a librarian, very simple, wholesome woman, Tammy Daybell was. And then Chad starts to write things, and they start to publish. He starts to self-publish, and he publishes other people's work. And life really changes for Chad Daybell. Nothing changed for Tammy. She's still living a good life and was living a good life until she died. Let's take a listen to Dr. Lisa Marsden describing for us Tammy Daybell's cause of death.
As you went through that process, did a cause of death become apparent for Tammy Daybell?
No.
Did you find anything abnormal or anything that caught your attention in doing that internal exam?
The only thing abnormal we really found on Tammy's examination was that she had a lot of fluid in her lungs, which we call pulmonary edema. And she had a foamy fluid in her airways, so her trachea and her larger bronchi. The only thing that we really found in Tammy's system was fluoxetine, which was an antidepressant that she was known to have been prescribed for many years. And that was detected in her liver tissue at a reported therapeutic level.
Did you find any explanation or anything to explain the cause of death?
Not with toxicology. When we have negative autopsies like this, so it's not an autopsy that's completely normal, but there is no cause of death that we're able to see. There's a few things that we have to consider. So we consider, seizure disorders. We consider cardiac arrhythmias, and as far as non-natural causes, we consider asphyxia. We had our neuropathologist examine the brain very thoroughly to see if there was any possible reason why she could be having seizures. It is extremely unusual for a 49-year-old woman to just spontaneously start developing seizures without some anatomic reason, like a tumor or a brain bleed or something like that. And we just weren't able to find anything. Her heart was structurally normal. It was the normal size. It did not have dilated chambers. All of her valves were normal. So there was really no great reason why she would be experiencing a cardiac arrhythmia at this time of her life without anything preceding it. After that, we're left with asphyxia. And asphyxia is a diagnosis of exclusion. And in our opinion, we did thoroughly exclude the other potential causes of death with a negative autopsy.
All right, let's bring in our experts, board-certified forensic pathologist, Dr. Priya Banerjee. Also joining us, human behavior expert and jury consultant, Susan Constantine. Thank you both for being here. All right, Dr. Banerjee, we'll begin with the autopsy here. So a couple of things I'd like you to explain. Is it fair game to do this sort of as a process of elimination in the way that this was done, in this case, to get to cause and manner of death?
So I think hindsight is 20/20, right? So when she's exhumed, there's already suspicion. I think the kids are missing by then. That is where your red flag goes up just for the entire picture. But I'm not sure I would have certified this as asphyxia homicide. I think I would have called it undetermined in both aspects, because you really don't have anything to hang your hat on. And without being able to prove sort of more definitively the asphyxia, I think they're treading difficult waters. I think they're going to really get dinged on this again, potentially when the defense goes with their experts.
Now, undetermined means we don't know what it could be. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but it doesn't mean that to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty you can say it did.
Correct.
The asphyxia. Okay.
So undetermined, both for cause and manner, means that you don't have a cause, which means you don't know how it happened. And I think this day and age, like whether she had any genetic disorder in the heart, we go this extra sort of esoteric zebras, if you will, to look at anything possible. And even then, without, something positive, I think it's very hard. I do agree. I've seen a lot of pulmonary edema in asphyxia. That's a well-known change, but that's non-specific. I've seen it in head trauma, heart attacks, drug overdose, and I know those were excluded, but in and of itself, that's not enough for me to personally call asphyxia. Now, the bruises are worrisome. Was she restrained?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second. What I want to move on to, though, is the 911 call, Susan, that is made by Chad Daybell. Because remember, it's he and his wife who are purportedly in bed alone when all this happens. He makes the call. Let's take a listen.
I'm Chad, the husband. She's clearly dead. We don't know.
Sorry. Okay, Chad. I'm going to get somebody up to you right now, okay?
Yeah, the corner where the blinking yellow light is with the red house.
Yes, sir. Red house on the corner.
Yes.
Blinking yellow light.
Right.
Okay. We'll get somebody out to you, okay? I'm so sorry.
Okay.
If you need anything else, call me back, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, Susan, we've got two things for you. One, his reaction listening to that in the courtroom, and then, you know, his voice on that 911 call.
Sure. So his voice, you hear him when he talks about his wife after she obviously is dead, and he even states that she clearly is dead. And then you hear this kind of sound pop out. That's what we call a vocal burst, and that is linked to specific emotions. So what he is trying to convey is a form of grief, right? But it's not truly grief, okay? So when you listen to the words, you tie things together, there's something is just really off about the emotion. It appears to be and sounds manufactured to me. When I watch his body language as he's listening to this, he's always very restrained, right? He's very much contained. His hands are clasped in front of him. He has a lot of control within his own body. So the only thing you see move is his head. So when he's hearing and he's showing some micro expressions of emotion, there's only one moment where you see his thumb kind of cross over to show any sort of what we call a soothing or a manipulator. What we don't see is genuine emotion. What we see is a counterfeit sadness because he's pressing his lips and they kind of come up, and what he's doing is he's pumping some air right into his cheeks to appear like he is burdened. It feels like a heavy burden. His head movements to when he brings it back up are too sudden. So there's not this morphing in and out of emotion, and you can see that when he grabs the tissues, quick dabs, puts it down, and then he sits right back up again.
You always got to find them. They're never down here. When I cry, it ends up down here. It's funny. Some of these defendants, it just stays up here. All right, let's listen to more of Dr. Lisa Marsden talking now, Dr. Priya Banerjee, about those bruises.
The bruising that you observed, do you recall where it was on Miss Daybell's body?
So Miss Daybell had one bruise on the left side of her chest. She had one bruise on her left arm, and then she had a cluster of bruises on her right arm.
In your opinion, could those be consistent with someone being restrained?
Yes. All of the bruises on Miss Daybell were what we would call acute, which meant that under the microscope, the only thing there was bleeding into the soft tissues under the skin. So there was no inflammatory response. So the body had not started to mount a response to try to clean up the injury.
And so again, the bruises on Tammy in this case, you determined would have occurred sometime around her time of death.
True.
Dr. Priya Banerjee, how about the bruising?
Yeah, the chest is really the weirdest one. I mean, she was dead in bed. And then this cluster on the arm, that's where you think maybe there was a knee or like a knee in one place and him holding her down in the other. She doesn't have any like mouth trauma, so that is a little unusual. If you're smothered with a pillow or with a palm, you would think her teeth would cut the lips, but it's unusual. And I think that is at least more suggestive of the asphyxia in totality. I think the microscopic evaluation of the bruises is very, very informative, that her body didn't react. They're not old. You can't just look at a bruise and date it. You have to look at it under the microscope.
All right, Susan Constantine, one more thing I want you to comment on, and this is Brenda Dye, who's at the scene, describing Chad's reaction at the scene of his wife's death and the reaction of their son, Garth.
When you arrived, Chad Daybell was distraught, wasn't he?
Yes.
Sobbing.
Yes.
And you noted that it was his son that was not upset. His son was, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say his son was reserved?
Yes.
Quiet.
Yes.
And in the FBI report, you mentioned that you think that maybe his son was in shock. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, and it's still your assessment at this point that at the time you felt that his son Garth was in shock. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, Susan, and Garth is an adult son. He's not a small child.
Sure, and I do believe he probably was in shock, like it was so overwhelming that he was almost speechless. But we listened to about the issue about Chad, I think that was going to move into that he was very scripted. It didn't seem authentic, and it seemed as if it was written down and then he just rehearsed it. And that's that detachment, the emotional detachment, because he can't perform well. He's really a bad actor. So when I look at him, I see all of these manufactured, faux, counterfeit expressions that he's not able to pull it off authentically. So that just tells me he's devoid of emotion, he's detached, and he's unable to express authentic emotion.
Susan Constantine, Dr. Priya Banerjee, great to have you here with your expertise. We appreciate your very valuable time. Thank you so much. Up next, Tylee's trip to Yellowstone. Is this picture from that trip her final moment alive and happy? This image is so tragic on so many levels because you've got these two children, JJ and Tylee, so happy at Yellowstone, which is an amazing place to go. And they're there with Uncle Alex. But the hook here is that Uncle Alex is going to kill both of them. Oh, it's heartbreaking. So this is a big part of the murders of JJ and Tylee, this trip to Yellowstone, because it's the last known pictures that we have of Tylee. But investigators also able to track Alex Cox's route and where he was going and how it applies to what happened to Tylee and ultimately to JJ. Let's take a listen to the testimony of Ricky Wright here talking about Alex Cox and where he is and where everyone else is.
The device actually had left the Rexburg area. It was last at a Maverick at 11:52 in Rexburg. That was the last time it stopped in Rexburg, and it had been there prior to that 11:52. But 11:52 is about when it appears to leave, and then we begin to see this data trail, these breadcrumbs that as it moves to the west entrance of Yellowstone National Park. It's there about 13:29, and then it continues driving continuously until it gets around the Old Faithful Lodge area where Old Faithful Geyser is. Some of these data points are less precise, and that's roughly about 1450. We're not exactly sure at Old Faithful where it's at, but then we do get some more specific data points, 1504 around the Old Faithful Lodge cafeteria, and then after that around the Old Faithful Geyser Rim, and then later in the parking lot at Old Faithful until about 1627. Then the device ends up traveling from that point further into the park down near Lewis Lake, and then it reverses track out the way it came to the west entrance, which it arrives at 1840, and makes one more stop in West Yellowstone, the town itself, in a commercial area near this Buckaroo Bill's Barbecue Grill. It seems to be right around that point. Along the route back, it didn't appear that there was enough data to support any kind of deviation or pause in the travel of any significant duration. The vehicle arrives back at 565 Pioneer Road, number 175, the residence for Lori Vallow at 20:37 or 8:37 p.m.
And based on what you reviewed with this data, did you come to a conclusion with regard to Tylee Ryan?
Yes. So the initial information about us conducting additional investigation at Yellowstone, I couldn't identify much of any points to investigate there other than potentially along the route traveled, and that based on the photograph and her last known proof of life that she had, I had confidence that she had returned to this address at 8:37 p.m. and now that was our new point in our timeline that we needed to scrutinize, our last known location for her.
So that's the trip to Yellowstone. And then Alex Cox's travels the next day, even more important in tracking where he is going and where he ends up. Pay close attention.
There are just 3 precise data points, and they are at 2:42, and then a second one at 2:42, and then another one at 3:37. All 3 of these were GPS data points with a 4-meter radius, and they seem to put the device in Unit 175.
And again, this was the only time in September that you noticed that device in 175 in those early morning hours?
Yes, except for on September 30th, there was one occasion where it stayed the night in 175 on the night of September 30th. So beginning at almost approximately at 9 o'clock, it seems to leave 565 Pioneer Road, number 107, and moves at driving speed north to US. It gets on US 20, and it continues towards an address of 202 North, 1900 East in Rexburg, Idaho.
And did you determine who that address is associated with?
Yes, the 202 North, 1900 East in Rexburg was the residence of Chad Daybell at that time. The first data point that we got at 9:21 is actually behind the main residence at the Daybell property, back on the rear of the property. And that is a GPS coordinate with a 6-meter radius. As best I could determine, it seems like the device is leaving that area of the residence at approximately 11:45.
All right, let me bring in my special guest, Lori Vallow's cousin, author of the book I Walked Through the Fire to Get Here, and host of the Midlife Revolution podcast. Megan Connor is with us. Also joining us, private investigator, religious cult expert, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, and author of the book Deceived. Mike King is with us. Megan, I think about that trip to Yellowstone, and to me that is so incredibly tragic. Those 2 kids are happy. They're happy to be together, and it's just a wonderful place to visit. Little did they know what was in store.
Yeah, as a family member, I think about that all the time. Lori could have turned the kids over to any one of us. There's a long list of people that would have loved to take care of Tylee and JJ if she wanted to move on and have another life. And it is really sad to see, they're happy, they're together, and would have loved to see their lives continue together.
And Tylee holding little JJ, using that maternal instincts that she had, taking care of a little brother. Mike, there's a lot here, right? And initially the search, everyone was wondering, did something happen at Yellowstone? Doesn't seem that way. Seems like it happened at Lori's house, and the GPS data that they were putting together, everything that they were doing, put Alex Cox at Lori's that night, and then the following morning goes to that backyard where Tylee ended up being found.
Exactly, Vinny. And I think the thing that's so interesting, we have to keep reminding ourselves, is that when you're trying to figure out location, and this expert is doing a great job of trying to get this point across, I think the defense is doing a great job of trying to muddy the waters, but it's a certainty range. It's a guesstimate in range that says, hey, based on cell towers, GPS off of the device, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth low energy, that that signal is going to be stronger or weaker, and that's going to show that certainty range. But it's saying that with certainty, that person is inside of this radius. And it's really hard for him to get past the fact that people keep getting in the right radius at the right time. And I thought something incredible came out today that I don't know that the prosecution made as much headway with as they could have, but I don't know if you caught that part, Vinny, where they talked about Cox's phone being left at his apartment, but then he picked up this burner phone that happened to make 10 phone calls to Chad Daybell's phone on the day of this murder. That to me is like the biggest moment of the day. I just started jumping up and down in my seat.
Oh, absolutely. I still haven't seen any case where there's an innocent use of a burner phone. Megan, Alex Cox, it keeps coming back to him. He died, you know, before any trial, before people were arrested in this case. He thought he was going to be the fall guy, but it looks like he was potentially the hitman taking out his niece.
Yeah, there was a really big moment a couple of weeks ago, too. If you put today's information together with the testimony from the cast data expert that happened last week, we know that Chad called Alex around 9 o'clock in the morning on both of the mornings in question. And then Alex's device is seen at Chad's property. And so it's kind of like Chad calling Alex to give him the all clear, and then Alex shows up at the property. And you put that together with the data we found today. I went and visited Chad Daybell's property, so I know what they're talking about when they say they found a ping behind the house. There's a little driveway right there. That would have been where Alex pulled up when he first got to the house. And then the ping on the northwest corner of the property is where you would have to go through a gate to bring a vehicle through to the field where they ultimately ended up finding Tylee's remains.
We're short on time tonight, but a big thank you, Mike King, Megan Connor. We will speak again.